Hyundai is increasingly offering some very high-quality cars, one of them being this third-generation Santa Fe SUV crossover model. Crisply styled, well-equipped and powered by a punchy 197 PS 2.2-litre diesel engine, it offers a choice between 5 or 7 seats and 2 or 4-wheel drive. It's an SUV for people who probably never thought they'd drive an SUV. A Hyundai for those who probably never thought they'd drive a Hyundai. In short, a car that promises to surprise you. Look at a car like this, Hyundai's third-generation Santa Fe, and you get some idea of just how far this South Korean brand has come in recent years. This, after all, exactly the kind of quality product that has driven the recent improvement in its fortunes. The Santa Fe has had a big role to play here. Looking back, it was the launch of the second-generation version of this car in 2006 that really put Hyundai on the map. Not only was it beautifully built, it was also beautifully market positioned. The first affordable SUV to blur the boundaries between the compact Freelander RAV4 class and larger family-sized Discovery and Shogun type models. So Santa Fe buyers paid compact SUV prices, but got the kind of 7-seat capacity they'd previously needed a much larger SUV for. No wonder this became a bestseller for the UK importers. Not surprisingly, it's a concept that competitors have since copied, including Hyundai's partner Kia, whose Sorento has basically the same 2.2-litre diesel engine under the bonnet. Important then for this third-generation Santa Fe to be able to distance itself from both this and other potential sector rivals, particularly as its pricing has risen to reflect dramatic claimed improvements in quality and design. Let's check it out. Now, how an SUV handles is usually pretty far down the priority list after how it looks, how much it costs and how much room there is inside. We used to take it as read that a big SUV would be about as sharp as a serving of refried beans to drive. But in recent years we've seen the pendulum turn the other way with sporty 4x4s that cornered better, but at the expense of decidedly brittle ride quality. There has to be a happy medium between these two extremes, and I can see many potential buyers agreeing with Hyundai that this car rather neatly strikes it. To make absolutely sure of this, the Koreans spent some time during the development of this car tuning its suspension to suit our frankly horrible roads, with the emphasis firmly on ride quality rather than rally driving. It's an approach I've appreciated in my time with this car, in between ferrying the family between ballet lessons and ball games. Once upon a time, in a big SUV like this, the sight of a scar left down the highway by a cable TV team would result in the kind of comportment you'd expect from a bulk freight carrier in a Biscay gale. But this Santa Fe handles such road undulations without breaking too much of a sweat. It ultimately has a ride and handling balance that's pretty much what you'd want from a large family vehicle. Not that easy a thing to achieve in something this big, tall and heavy. You can even tweak the steering to suit your mood thanks to the flex steer system we first saw on Hyundai's i30 family hatch. It's a system that, via this steering wheel button, varies the steering weighting between a light comfort mode, a heavier sport setting, and an in-between normal setting that you'll probably end up using most of the time. Like most of these sort of things, it's fun to play with for the first few miles, then you end up never using it. Hardly less frequent will be the typical Santa Fe owner's need for four-wheel drive capability. One reason why front-driven two-wheel drive variants are offered at the foot of the range for the first time. Now, don't dismiss this option out of hand. In this form, this car is good value, gets good economy, and equipped with a set of winter tyres would probably be able to handle just about anything the British winter could throw at it. If, however, rather understandably, you can see little point in choosing an SUV-style car without SUV-style traction, then the 4x4 Santa Fe derivatives offer an all-wheel drive system that's a little more complex than the norm. Like most setups of that kind, this one runs in front-wheel drive form most of the time, but has a system able to transfer up to 50% of drive to the rear wheels should a lack of traction demand it. So far, so predictable. Unlike many part-time four-wheel drives though, this Hyundai can be locked into four-wheel drive at the press of this lock button to the right of the steering wheel, which is perfect for especially slippery conditions such as muddy off-roading or driving on snow or ice. What's more, you can use the lock button on the fly at speeds of up to 25 miles an hour. If you are off the beaten track, you'll find starting off up steep slopes aided by hill start assist control, but slightly impeded by a relatively shallow approach angle of 16.5 degrees. Coming back down steep slopes will be aided by downhill brake control and a departure angle of just over 21 degrees. There's a ramp breakover angle of just under 17 degrees. Ultimately though, really gnarly off-roading will be impeded by a relatively modest 180 millimeters of ground height. And engines? Well, actually there's only one. A 197 PS all-aluminium turbo diesel with a gutsy 431 newton meters of torque to draw upon, enough to spirit you from rest to 62 miles an hour in 9.8 seconds on the way to a top speed of 118 miles an hour in this four-wheel drive version. You'll go about half a second quicker if you opt for the two-wheel drive model. The other choice that you'll have to make is between 6-speed manual transmission or this 6-speed automatic. The manual's fine, but for me the automatic suits the laid-back nature of this car rather better, even if it does drop the braked towing capacity from 2.5 to 2 tons, something you might need to factor in if you're regularly going to be hauling things about. Anything else for the report card? Not much. Just two things. First, that the larger 19-inch wheels on the flagship version don't do much for ride quality. And second, that refinement speed is very good with little engine or wind noise and damped engine mounts helping to reduce vibration in the cabin. As a result, you really could consider this as an alternative to more prestigiously badged luxury SUVs, a mark of just how far Hyundai has come. The Santa Fe is one of those cars that's become progressively more stylish throughout its existence. The first generation model of 2001 was a distinctly odd looking thing with deeply concave sides that looked as if it had been reversed into, and a rather plasticky interior that could be specified in disturbingly uniform shades of brown. The second generation version though, that arrived 5 years later, was a massive improvement with a much higher quality interior and a more mature styling approach, though it did lack a little something in the personality stakes. This third generation model though hits all the right notes. Here's how. The front end features a big grille and a high pedestrian-friendly bonnet line, with all of the lights and air intakes a stylised trapezoidal shape that offers up an agreeably expensive look. Wider aesthetics are apparently influenced by Hyundai's so-called fluidic sculpture design language, developed in this car with what the company calls a storm edge concept, supposed to capture the strong and dynamic images created by nature during the formation of a storm. Nope, me neither. Here at the side you'll see this sharp detail line that runs through the door handles and gives shape and tension to the flanks, ending up at the rear light clusters. There's also a sharply rising waistline that gives the kind of wedgy profile more reminiscent of the latest breed of sportier crossover vehicles. This seems to be where Hyundai is trying to position this Santa Fe, which might be doing it something of a disservice. There's too much substance to this design for that. Still, keeping the SUV set sweet doesn't necessarily mean that this car can't be smart and clever at the same time. Indeed, there are plenty of neat touches in evidence, like these deep doors that cover the side sills so that occupants' clothes aren't soiled on entry and exit. At the rear, you'll find twin tailpipes and a hexagonal mesh set into the lower part of the bumper to give the whole area a more purposeful look. Jump inside and the good news continues. We're getting used to some very smart high-end interiors these days, and this Santa Fe doesn't deviate from that script one iota. There seem to be quite a variety of materials used around the fascia, but the overall look and feel is attractive, with the dash dominated by this central colour screen, below which lie the controls for the ventilation and the stereo. Many of the functions of which are replicated on the steering wheel, to the right of which lie the controls for the four-wheel drive running gear. Since the wheelbase of this model is the same as its predecessor, you'd be forgiven for assuming that it's pretty much the same size inside. You'd be wrong. A marginal increase in overall length has enabled the designers to conjure up an extra 45mm of middle seat knee room, and there's also an extra 11mm of headroom here as well. It also helps that this rear bench can slide backwards and forwards so that you can prioritise space for either legs or luggage behind, and it reclines for greater comfort on longer journeys. If you've specified a 7 rather than a 5-seat model and therefore have the third row of seating that I have here, then you'll quickly find that access to that third row could be easier. The problem's caused by the fact that this seat base doesn't lift up and tumble forward. All you can actually do is push forward the rear backrest, which leaves a rather narrow gap through which you have to squeeze yourself. Fine for kids, but a little awkward if it's Granny being taken for her Sunday trip to the garden centre. Once you're in place though, even though your knees are rather up around your waist, room back here isn't too bad for a couple of adults, providing that the journey isn't too long. On the plus side, to increase the rather feeble luggage capacity you get with all 7 seats upright, supplemented by this rather shallow underfloor compartment, these rearmost seats do fold away very neatly into the floor when not in use, in a cargo area that has an extra 37mm of depth over what was available in the previous generation model, freeing up a total of 534 litres of fresh air. If you go for a 7-seater model like I have here, you also get self-levelling suspension to cope with heavier loads. If you need more luggage space and don't require some or all of the second row, then the seat back here can fold forward 40-20-40, so you can tailor the interior to the exact combination of people and packages that you have in mind. One inevitable consequence of the Santa Fe becoming better finished, better equipped and better engineered is that prices have inevitably crept up. That price rise being partly offset in this third generation model by the provision of front-wheel drive variants that start at less than £26,000, with the increment for four-wheel drive being around £1,400. Now, most British customers will want the 7-seat layout that I've got here, a configuration that attracts a premium of around £1,200 over the 5-seat version. British people also tend to prefer the 6-speed automatic gearbox rather than the 6-speed manual, and that would require a premium over the manual of around £1,700. So, if you want this car with the four-wheel drive, the 7-seat layout and the auto gearbox that you'll probably be looking for, you'll need to set aside a budget of around £30,000, even with entry-level trim. I'll need to put that kind of pricing into context for you, and as usual, there are different ways of looking at it. You could point out that this car's design stablemate, Kia's mechanically almost identical Sorento, would save you around £1,500 model for model, or that similarly targeted SUV and crossover rivals like Mitsubishi's Outlander or the Nissan Qashqai Plus 2 would also save you money. Whether any of these alternatives can offer quite as complete a product as this Santa Fe, though, is open to question. What's not up for debate is that this car offers you an awful lot more for your money than the kind of smaller 5-seat only Honda CR-V or Toyota RAV4 soft-roader that would cost you a similar amount. If you're tempted towards this Hyundai, then it'll certainly help that you get a lot of kit for your money, with even the entry-level model getting 18-inch alloy wheels, power heated mirrors, daytime running lights, rear privacy glass, rear parking sensors, heated seats, cruise control, the Flex Steer adaptive steering system, a trip computer, Bluetooth with voice recognition, and a decent quality MP3 compatible 6-speaker stereo with the USB and AUX connectivity and audio controls on the leather covered steering wheel. Personally, I'd want to find another couple of thousand and trade up to the mid-range premium level that I have here that would get me leather upholstery, satellite navigation, roof rails and a reverse parking camera. Safety is another Santa Fe strength, hence its full house 5-star Euro NCAP safety crash test rating. All models get Isofix child seat fastenings, a pedestrian-friendly active bonnet and 7 airbags, including a driver's knee bag. To hopefully make sure that you'll never have to use them, the ABS braking system has a brake assist set up to help you in emergency stops that will be advertised to following motorists by an ESS emergency stop signal that flashes the rear lights. There's also downhill brake control to help you down slippery slopes, ESP stability control and VSC vehicle stability control. The latter feature a boon when towing or when braking on surfaces with uneven levels of grip. As well as offering decent value for money, this Santa Fe isn't going to break the bank when it comes to day-to-day operating costs. With no petrol model in the range, it's hard to find a variant that's anything other than saintly when it comes to fuel returns and CO2 emissions. There is one caveat though, and that's with regard to the automatic gearbox. If you look at, say, the 7-seat four-wheel drive version that I'm driving here, then in manual form it'll give you 46.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and put out 159 grams per kilometre of CO2. Whereas in automatic guise, you're looking at that falling to 41.5 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 178 grams per kilometre of CO2. Still, it's worth putting that into perspective. It's not bad, is it, to get over 40 miles to the gallon from a big, heavy 7-seater SUV. And if you look at the most economic end of the Santa Fe scale, the front-driven 5-seat variant will give you 47.9 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and put out 155 grams per kilometre of CO2. Residual values look extremely strong, thanks in part to Hyundai's increasing reputation for reliability. Owners can also take advantage of the brand's 5-year triple care package, which includes 5 years unlimited mileage warranty, 5 years of RAC roadside assistance, and 5 years of dealer vehicle healthcare checks. That could swing the balance for higher mileage drivers, but even if you're not, what premium do you place on 5 years peace of mind? Bear that in your thoughts if you're doing comparison shopping. The Hyundai Santa Fe has improved and improved fast. Its predecessor was a really solid vehicle that now makes a great used buy, but this one has stepped it up more convincingly than many thought possible. It looks great, it's really well built, it rides and handles exactly as it should, and it's cleverly thought through inside. As a result, it's almost impossible to dislike, even if SUVs aren't really your thing. Come to think of it, this Korean contender is probably a very good choice for somebody who's never even really considered an SUV before. It's not showy or offensive, instead marrying the best bits of cars of this kind, namely their space, versatility and ease of ownership, with the refreshing lack of drama of a normal big family car. And it is big, a size up from the kind of 5-seat only Honda CR-V or Toyota RAV4 style soft roader that would probably cost you the same kind of money. Cars like those might be better to drive, of course, and there are a few similarly targeted Far Eastern rivals that are a little cheaper to buy. Some Santa Fe purchasers may also look for a little more choice when it comes to engines, though the options of front or four-wheel drive, 5 or 7 seats, and manual or automatic transmission should see most customer preferences covered off. Ultimately, though, this car's quite good enough to justify its market positioning, which means that if you've got a family, have room in your life for just a single car, and need one that will discreetly go the distance without a hiccup, then it's well worth trying one of these. Do that, and who knows, you might once again start to believe in Santa.